evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Teen Talk Live. I am your host, Ann Dillard, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And every time I come on, I share with you that my job, my work is to transform the lives and minds of teens and those who love them. And it gives me great pleasure to be here with you tonight. And I have a really, really special guest who is joining us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this out. And if you're joining this broadcast, I want you to share it out with others, share it on your timeline, and invite people to come in. If you know anybody who have a teenager in their life, whether it's a boy or a girl, I want you to invite them to join this conversation with us. And it's just taken me a couple of seconds because I am figuring out how to work this system still. After all the changes that has happened on Facebook, I'm still figuring it out. But come on in, join me, and join in on this conversation because it's going to be a really, really good conversation. We're talking about middle school drama, okay? Middle school drama. And share it out. Invite others to come in. And right now, I'm going to turn to our guest, Dr. Adrian Richie. Welcome, Dr. Richie. Thank you for joining us on Teen Talk Live.
Thank you, Ann. I'm so excited to be here. This is awesome. What a great opportunity to talk about kids.
Yes. And we were talking earlier and I was saying, we've planned this so long ago to have this conversation during the month of July when we're talking about building self-esteem, positive self-esteem in teens. Right. Yes, so I'm delighted that you're here and welcome. So tell my audience, how do you serve in the world?
Well, I've been an educator now for 35 years, maybe. I've been a principal for 22 years. Actually retired, and I'm going to be working with the college level with English classrooms for remediation students coming into Indiana University, Northwest in Gary, Indiana.
Tell my audience, how do you serve? That's just the sound on here.
I've been an educator now for 35 years, maybe. I've been a principal for 22 years.
Okay, I'm messing up on the sound here, so I'm just working it out a little bit. Okay, all right. I think I got it.
I think we got it.
Sorry about that. Okay, so you've been in the education field for over 30 years, right? And you've served as a principal in the middle school capacity, correct?
Right. Out of those 22 years, probably about half those years was at middle school ages. And some with some elementary, some with high school. And probably the most rewarding, maybe the most difficult, if you want to put it that way, are middle school.
It is a very challenging time, and I would agree with you that it's one of the most rewarding times in education because as a caring adult, you get to be so influential in the lives of so many students.
Yes, you do. And you're exactly right. And I don't think there's anything more important than that they know you care. I don't think anything takes place of them knowing that you're actually there because you care. And you're not just there to pass them in the hallway without an hello. It's got to be an hello every morning. And you spend a little bit of time with anyone and all that you can.
Right. And the other piece about being in middle school, because I've been in the middle school capacity for years and I've served as a clinician in the middle school for 4 years. But one of the things that I love about middle school children is that they're so forgiving and they just want to know that you're going to be there tomorrow.
Exactly. And they are so forgiving. They're so forgiving. And, and they want to know that you're consistent. They want to know that if you walk your talk. You don't just put it out there and then expect them to do it. They like to see the model of it. They like to see if I tell them the secret to all this is to treat everybody the way you want to be treated, then they got to see me doing the same things. And as an educator, my teachers, I expected that same kind of relationship with the kids.
Absolutely, because one thing, I learned really fast in the middle school, and a lot of the new teachers, when they come in, they learn this really fast. Middle schoolers, they can sniff out fear and fake.
Yes, they can, and they're so good at it. But you know what? Their brains are wired to do it that way. This is at that development level, and we've talked a little bit about this before. This is the development level at the brain level at this point. It's designed to begin sniffing that out. This is where they start now making these connections and figuring out, is this the path? Is this something I want to be connected to? Is this a group I want to be connected to, a person I want to be connected to? That's the age it's with that. It's no longer you just go blindly along. They're now starting to put these little connections together. And it does become a very confusing time.
It is very confusing, but yet that's a very critical skill. And a lot of times as adults, we try to, shove it down and not validate that that's happening and how important that stage is, right?
Well, and you're exactly right, because, and I don't want to get into the parenting skills of some, but all are learning. As I told the students over many, many times, it's tough raising parents today, but it's difficult raising parents today. But a lot of times parents have gotten so conditioned into the role of just saying, you're here, but not to be heard, seen, but not heard. And now suddenly you're dealing with a teenager. You're dealing with a young person now that wants to be heard, not just seen. They want to be heard, and they want to be acknowledged. They want to be recognized. They want to be told that they're important and that things that are going on are pretty cool. And will you come watch me do these things that are cool to me? And it's parents have to make a shift. And I think that a lot of times we're really missing the boat on actually educating parents on how to recognize these shifts in their kids.
I totally agree. I know that was a hard place for me to make that shift, because as they are moving into their individuality and their independence and things like that, it feels like they're pushing against you as the parent, right?
And really they're not. And isn't it fun to talk to the parents and say, that's really not what's going on here. You have a young person that's just trying to find themselves. They are now trying to put these feelers out to figure out, who am I? What am I about? Why am I here? Who am I here for? And it looks like they're pushing against the parents, but they're not. They're just growing up.
It does. And for whatever reason, us as parents, and I'm guilty, sometimes you're not ready to let them go. You still want to do the same things that you did at 5, 6, and 7, and it just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. No, they're growing, and it's been going on for millennium. It's been going on for generations. This is how it's worked, and this is what's been going on. The only difference is today, honestly, Ann, is the technology. Now with the social media, before, whenever we would deal with children that would have bullying issues, let's say, with another student, that other student actually had to come up to them and bully them.
Right.
Now it's all on social media. So we spend so many hours now just trying to get kids to understand that these kids that are saying things or doing things over the social media to you, they're cowards. They're hiding behind a piece of technology because they can't really say to you these things, and it makes them brave. So we spend a lot of time dealing with this type of issue today that just never existed years ago. I was in a meeting not too long ago with a bunch of superintendents and the state superintendent actually, and principals from around the state of Indiana, and talking about this very issue of bullying and such. And my comment to them was, when I got started in this almost 40 years ago, these kind of things we're talking about today almost didn't exist.
Right.
30 years ago, these things we didn't. The last 20 years, something has changed. And I think technology, as good as it is, and I love it, as good as it is, I think that has kind of given young people, again, who are trying to find their own identity, who are trying to discover those paths that they want to get into, it's given them an opportunity to do some things that never happened 10 years ago, maybe even. Exactly. And so it's caused a lot of angst in the educational field right now of dealing with middle school kids.
It makes it really hard because, when I was in the middle school full time, we would actually gear up for Monday mornings.
Yes.
Because we knew inevitably whatever drama that happened on social media over the weekend, it was going to spill over in the Monday morning school.
And you're so true. That is so right. Because you had to be ready for Monday. Because when they had a couple of days free to go out there and mix it up a little bit, Monday morning, here we come.
Yes, yes. And it was hard getting the children to understand, the students to understand that, they're like, well, this didn't happen at school, Miss Ann. This didn't happen at school. But, you all are fighting it out on school campus. So it directly affects your school and the atmosphere in the school. So I would do a lot of mediation groups on Monday mornings.
Yes. And you know what? And those are some of the things I did want to talk about, how important it is to kind of get ahead of the curve and to know that these things are going to be happening. So you put events in place, you put things in place where you deal with groups like that on Monday morning, because there's going to be an issue that's going to stem from something over the weekend. So why not? These are the schools that we find, and I've done a lot of work with, I'll plug a group here, the International Center for Leadership and Education, the ICLE, which is Dr. Bill Daggett, just a great, great group. And I've done a lot of work with them since like 2002, 2003. About every school I've been at, I've always plugged them in somehow to the framework of what we try to get kids to understand. But in going through the work with those folks and seeing the things that successful schools do, that's one of them, exactly what you were doing. That's one of the successful things they did. They always were ahead of the game.
You have to come prepared, because if not, you'll spend the whole week trying to catch up.
And you do. And you do. And the kids love that, though. They look forward to that. They know no matter what the drama was over the weekend, they know you're going to be there and we're going to talk about it.
Exactly. And what really helped me was to have just a few of the leaders on my team. So they would come in and give me the heads up. Yes. This is what happened. This is what happened. So, you always, as an educator, as a clinician, or whomever you are that work in the school, it's always good to have those, key people on your team.
Yeah. And, that's another great point, because even when teachers working in the classrooms, one of the things that we've learned and I try to encourage is identify who those kids are early. Because when you make them responsible for something, anything, I don't care, help them with attendance, give them some responsibility. It is their responsibility to make sure this happens every day. It's a totally different classroom setting.
Yes.
It's a different classroom setting, because and again, we're dealing with some brain development at a young age, at a stage where these kids need to have something focused on. They're trying to identify and find themselves. So give those leaders, give those guys that they're seeking attention in any of that where they're leading any kind of problem. They're just seeking attention. They just want to be recognized. They want to know that they're noticed. So let's go ahead and give them something that makes them proud of doing a job that they're noticed for.
And that's so key. That's so key. And it brings me right to our topic of self-esteem. And we talk about brain development and how that impacts the middle schoolers' self-esteem. So can you give us just a little bit of overview on what's happening in the middle schoolers' brain, 6th to 8th grade? It's a critical point in their development.
Well, and it is a critical point. And, one of the things we talked about offline a little bit too is what we're finding in brain development anyway, is that the young male, his brain is not fully developed, or what we consider to be fully developed, until 25 years old. And so he's gone through college. He's got 3 years out of college in a lot of cases, and still his brain is not fully developed. A young lady, on the other hand, we're finding the brain development about 21 years old. 20, 21, they've probably developed their brain as much as it's going to at that point. So they are way ahead of the guys early on, and it's going on even in the middle school age. That's how quickly, and the difference between those brain developments. So whenever you have the conflict, the issues between the boys and the girls, understand the girls are way ahead. The boys are just, they look like they're grown men, but that frontal lobe just isn't quite making the connections to all of those different little synapses in that brain yet.
Exactly. And I think that's so key, because with the prefrontal cortex not developed, I think it's so critical that the parents be present, right?
I think so. I
to
think
be that to be that for them until they develop it, or the caring adults in their lives, like you, the principal, me, the clinician, and the mentors and things like that.
And Ann, I love the way you said that, because that's exactly the truth, and that is exactly what needs to be going on. We need to somehow educate more of the parents, as well as teachers, as well as the clinicians, as well as anybody else dealing with these children, to understand that somebody, some adult, somebody whose brain is already developed at that level, they are there to help them through all these questions, because they're just trying to find their identity. They're just trying to figure out who they are. They need somebody besides their own peers who have no more experience than they do at what's bothering them. But yet they will run to this other teen and find out what they believe they should do. Instead
Yes.
of, but it's so important. Again, I'll go back to the Daggett research there with the ICLE stuff. What we found was that, rigor, relevance, and relationships was his model, and it all starts with relationships.
It really does.
Every teacher should have a student that they are making that relationship connection with. That student should feel that they can go to some adult within their world and talk about any of these issues and whenever they can't make that connection, that's whenever we lose these guys. It's when they don't feel there's any connection to be made with an adult. Exactly.
And that's when we label them the high flyers, right? Because it's like, why am I here? I'm not going to be fake. Right. And sometimes there's so much fear on the teacher's part in stepping out, doing something different, and making that relationship or the relational connection with the student. And then you have behavioral challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and build those relationships. And I mean, there are so many good ways to do that within the classroom. And I love nothing more than doing work with teachers and teacher development, classroom development, classroom management, just coming up with icebreakers, coming up with things to work into the classroom time, but every day, even with the kids, to where that you give them an opportunity to interact, and to interact in a positive way, in a way that we're now, what you're actually talking, you're walking, what you're saying, you're actually doing, and they're getting to see that this is how you get along, this is how you develop. And so many times we miss that point, because I see so many teachers like, no, I've got to get to the next chapter, and I've got to get this test ready. I've got to get this. When we miss an opportunity for what I call a learning opportunity, a learning experience that you just got to take when it presents itself, anything that goes on in there, it's an opportunity for that child and for the whole classroom to learn sometimes. And that's one of the toughest things in education today, too, as you well know, that the teachers are all under a gun. They're all expected, you've got to get to this spot. You've got to get to this spot. These kids all have to pass this exam, and they all got to score as a school this high. Teachers really, I'm like I said, I've been doing almost 40 years, and I love the profession, but I'm kind of feeling bad for a lot of the things expected of people today.
Yes.
They can't develop those relationships because of all the other things they feel under the gun to get done. And it's missing it.
That is so critical. And I'm talking to you now, and I'm kind of missing this part of my life when I was in the middle school as a clinician, because one of the things that I would do would create brown bag lunches for the teachers, so that they could come down to the clinic area, and I could share with them about mental health and different things, mental health challenges and things that they're seeing in their classroom, because teachers have this much knowledge and training on mental health issues, and it's popping up more and more in our classrooms.
And it's exactly true. And because what we have found over the years, the teachers who come into the office and say just what you said, you want me to deal with him? I don't know how to deal with him. Nobody taught me that in school, how to deal with him. And that's the exact truth. So this is I don't like the way we've gotten there in this country with the gun shootings and all this stuff going on in these schools. What a terrible, terrible, terrible mess some of that is. But again, you got kids that they feel like they have nothing left. They have nobody that's working with them. They don't feel like there's any connection with any adults or even kids sometimes. But now we're finally saying, we need more counselors. We need some help. We need some people in the school that can actually take time to talk with the kids, to talk with the teachers, to help identify some of these crises before they ever reach the crisis. And before we just weren't doing it. Now I think that we're finally going to start making sure we have enough counselors on hand, people in there that's got an opportunity. Our counselors today, let's just go there for a minute. They don't get to be counselors. You see that? No, I mean, it's all paperwork. It's all pushing paper. It's all constantly
paperwork.
A child comes in there needing to have an adult to talk to, and it's kind of like, I would like to talk to you a little longer, but I've got to get this done, and I got to get that done.
Exactly. And that was my least favorite part about being in school therapy. I was always lacking and slacking on my paperwork because, you know, I would take it home. I mean, it wasn't good boundaries on my part, but the need was so great for not just the students and their families, but it was so great for the teachers and the staff as well. And it's like, okay, I'll get to the paperwork, but the paperwork, especially if you're dealing with insurance, it's so demanding and overwhelming.
Oh, and it is. And anybody that doesn't work in that field doesn't understand it, doesn't understand the demand, because you've only got so many hours in a day. And one thing that I've always refused to put the child second. And so it's made me have a lot of late hours at night to catch up to all the paperwork that I just couldn't get done during the day. But somebody had to catch this overflow of these kids. And I always felt like it was my job in the principal role. And I remember when I was at Prairie View A&M, where I got my master's in counseling and administration back in the day. And my Dr. Maxwell, the guy was awesome, but he said there's no, let me think exactly how I said this, because it's always meant a lot to me. There's no expediency with children. And I thought,
I love that.
There is no expediency with children. You take the time that's needed to make sure they get what they need.
I love that, because you know what? They want to know that you're there, that you're taking your time, that you are genuine, and that you care about them. Because if they can't sense that you care about them, they don't care about anything else. Oh,
that's exactly right. Because I mentioned the rigor, relevance, and relationship model, and where we always start with relationships, because I don't care how rigorous you make it. And by the way, rigor doesn't mean more difficult. It's not the same math problem 30 times. That's not rigor.
No.
It's challenging. It's something challenging. And relevance. So the kids today, even at the middle school level, they're not dummies. They're exposed now to a world through social media that's opened up probably more synapse than what we ever did when I was at their age. Just more brain activity, just so much out there now, awareness, that you can't fool them. If it's not relevant, they'll question you on it. So it's not only rigorous, but relevant. But it all starts with relationships, because it goes back to what you just said. If they don't think you care, I don't care how rigorous it is. I don't care how relevant you make it. It's not going to matter.
Exactly.
First. And middle school is a great age where they learn. That's what they're looking for. Middle school, that's what they're wanting to know. They're wanting to know
that you care.
Who cares? Who really cares?
And it doesn't matter if it's in the school. They want to know that you as a parent care. You see them as an individual. And a lot of times as parents, we miss the mark. We miss the mark with that. And
we do. And we do. And again, today's world, the parents are so busy. They're so busy. And the kids end up raising themselves in so many situations. And, and I've been in communities where I've been the principal, and where the child would go home and they would tell me, I haven't seen an adult in the house for 2 days. A lot of times we're going home to a home where there was no father anyway, and mom was working 2 or 3 jobs. And they never saw mom.
Right.
So they were raising themselves.
Yes.
So it's very important in those kind of situations that our teachers know who those students are.
Yes.
We identify those students early so that we know whenever we're working with those kids in the classroom, when that child says, I didn't get any sleep last night because I was taking care of a sick sibling, they were probably taking care of a younger sibling who wasn't feeling well. They're probably telling you the truth.
Absolutely.
They were playing mom for the entire night from the moment they got home from school the night before.
Yeah, I had students who slept in their uniforms.
Yeah.
so that they could get up and get on the bus in the morning.
Exactly.
You know.
And I tell you, that again is the critical part of that those students that are in those situations have been identified early, and that we know that they're practically homeless really at that point. And we got to treat them almost as homeless situations.
Right.
And that puts them behind the curveball, behind the 8 ball a little bit, because now we can't only ask them to develop socially, to develop academically, to develop anyway, because of what they already have going against them as they continue to go home to an empty house.
That's right.
A home where they are the ones that are responsible for siblings, to get them to bed, to get them up the next morning, to try to get them to school on time. I mean, it's just a revolving door of social issues for young kids.
Exactly. And I'm just going to take a little pause here to welcome our guests again. And if you're watching us, I am joined with Dr. Adrian Richie, and we're talking about middle school drama and how do we help build self-esteem in our students at that age. And Joseph said, this is good. It seems like building relationship is a no-brainer. What solutions do you have to overcome the extra load that teachers have? It almost seems insurmountable. So many issues for teachers and staff to deal with. That's a really good question.
Yes, and you're exactly right. And I think that the most important thing that administrators can do is always be looking for some conference, some training, somewhere that teachers can get some experience in dealing with these situations. Many times, and because the teachers, they honestly, quite frankly, they don't have time to search it out themselves.
No.
Our job as an administrator to know what it is they need and find some time to get them exposed to it, get them into some kind of a conference. During the summertime, we always have teachers going out to all kinds of neat little trainings and such. Because if not, it's changing so fast today, as we talked earlier about the social media and what these kids are exposed to today. They're seeing things that our teachers haven't seen before. And they're bringing these things to school, and we're like, where did you come up with that?
Absolutely.
Social media that we're not even aware of in our world, our experience. So I think that if we can continue practice, I used to always tell people, you go into a doctor's office, there's a license to practice medicine. You go into a law office, there's a license to practice law. I feel that the teacher's license should come with a license to practice education. Because it's practice every day. We're exposed to new things every day that these kids bring to school with them that we're expected to suddenly know something about. So it's true. Yes, we are the adult that they're looking to us for some clues, for some answers. But sometimes they come up with things and we just kind of look at each other and go, where did they come up with that?
Exactly. And that's where I think we need to have that agency effect. And one of the things that helped me to be successful in my work is to, be surrounded, to have a network of agencies. And that involved people in the community at all different capacities to who have boots on the ground to build, to bring in resources for our schools, our teachers, and our families, because things are moving so fast. And if you blink, you miss it.
And you do. You blink and you miss it. Because the kids they've gotten so many things that are in their worlds that we didn't even imagine. It wasn't even in our wildest dreams. Look at these cell phones. One thing I love to start with the freshman classes whenever I'm a high school principal, even middle school principal. And whenever we have our parent-student meeting to have that first orientation day, I'll always look out across the audience and have all the parents and all the students out there, and I'll say, you're not in trouble, but how many of you have a little computer in your pocket right now? And they know what I'm talking about, because these machines are amazing. And who would have ever thought? I mean, when I did my doctorate work, well, wouldn't this have been awesome? I could have carried a computer around with me in my pocket, and anytime I wanted
I
needed, I just pulled my phone out and look it up. This is what they have available to them today that it wasn't even in my wildest dreams.
Yes.
Not in my wildest dreams. And so now we're asking parents to deal with children, and it wasn't even in their parents' wildest dreams. Their parents today have no more experience at how to deal with these situations these kids are finding themselves in today than we do as teachers and administrators and educators. Isn't that something?
That is something, because those little cell phones, those little computers, I refer to them as the what is that? The subliminal manipulator.
I call them time machines.
Yeah,
I sit down with it all at once, time's gone.
they're there, just winning over your kid, right?
Yeah.
And you have no control over it for the most part.
No, and that's what you're competing with. You're
Exactly.
competing with that device. But you know what? Again, when I'm going to go back and I talk about the schools that we find are successful schools that have made the improvement jumps, are the ones who have embraced that technology and found a way to introduce it to kids, because now you're talking their language. Now suddenly it's a little bit more relevant to their world. And the schools that I find that, and the teachers, quite frankly, that have the most difficulty are the ones who refuse to embrace the technology. I don't know if they're just still afraid of it. I don't know. They think the kids are going to know more about it than them. You have to find a way to meet the kids halfway in their world of technology.
Absolutely.
You just have to. You have to. And parents the same way. It still amazes me how many parents I talk to who will not have the internet at home.
Yes.
We don't know. We're not going to have the internet at home. Oh, why not?
Right. And, I was coaching some parents who said, well, my child can't have a smartphone. And, when I look at it and we explored it together, it was more because of their own fear of, what they'll be exposed to. But I think the parents having the support and having the tools really can help them, because then their child isn't at a deficit.
Exactly.
Because it's good. It's both good and bad.
And it is. And you have to find that happy medium, because again, we're in their world. This is their world. And if they don't think you accept them for their world, you're going to have a tough time teaching them anything. They've got to believe that you're going to accept them in their world, and you're going to meet them in that world, and you're going to find a way to make sure that their learning is taking place. Because I'm telling you, and you know this well as I do, the kids don't come to school not wanting to learn. They want to learn. They know it's important to learn. And I'm telling the teachers all the time that parents aren't keeping their best kids home and sending us their worst. They're not. They're sending us all they've got. This is all they've got. And they expect us to do something with that child and educate them and teach them. And that child really does want to learn.
And that is so true. And Joseph said, would you say that you have to give up something to give the needed attention to the students who need this? Do teachers and staff need to be committed to make additional sacrifices? And
well, I'll go back to what my professor said there at A&M. There's no expediency with children. I mean, sometimes you're going to give up some of your personal time, and you will, and all teachers do. I absolutely hate whenever I see a report on the news or somewhere else that teachers don't care. That's not true. Have not, to this day, in all the years and all the schools I've been in, from urban to suburban, I don't care, big, small, the teachers didn't go into teaching for money. They went into it because they cared about children. They really did. And they are going to give something up. They are. I've known every teacher I've ever known to have given up some time for a child. And now a lot of times do they get frustrated because that child doesn't seem to pick the ball up and run with it after the teacher has taken time to work with them?
Right.
But again, you're talking middle school age kids. That's what we're talking about right now.
Exactly.
And a lot of times they're not going to pick the ball up and run with it, even though you did give up some of your time.
And you have to be consistent, because you did it once or twice and they didn't run with it, it doesn't mean you stop, because they are always looking for reasons to prove to themselves that you're not committed to them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they're looking for. They want to know that although they didn't pick the ball up and run with it this last time, that if they come to you again and you're going to give up your time again, they will start believing in you. And pretty soon they will pick that ball up and they will run with it.
Yes.
No, I mean, these machines, again, I love because over all the years and all the children that I've dealt with, whether it's in the classroom or whether it was in the office or wherever it was, or coaching, all the years I coached, and to have who are not young people anymore, adults now, find me on Facebook and remember something about a time that we were together, something I said, something we did, something that impressed upon them the importance of them being in this world. Excuse me. And then to acknowledge that back to me, I mean, just thinking about it now brings tears to my eyes.
Yes.
Because nothing's more important than that. Nothing's more important than you making an impression upon that child that they know they're important. And I always tell them, you know how important you are, you're here.
That's right.
That's how important you are, you're here.
Yes. I think it was James Comer who said you have to first touch the heart before you can teach the mind. I don't know if I'm right, but I think it might.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yes, but let me acknowledge some of our comments here from our guests. Hey, Catrice, I'm so glad you're here. She said, you know, you have to take into account everything that happens prior to that child coming to school.
Yes.
There's so much that precedes, that happens before they get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, the parents are sending us the best they've got, guys. I mean, they're not keeping the best at home and sending us what they don't want. They're sending us the best they've got. They're sending us everybody they got. And not slighting parents any in the least, because I'm a parent. I've raised 3 boys myself, and I can't say every day was a perfect day. Because, again, they were going through those developmental stages all along the way, and I was trying to learn those stages along with them.
Yes.
And all parents are doing the same thing. So they're bringing the best they've got to us. It's not that they're keeping the best they got and expecting us to take what they've got left over and we're supposed to raise them for them. No.
That is so true.
Parents are really doing the best job they can.
That is so true. And I think you know, part of the problem comes in when we don't believe that.
Right. Exactly.
You know, because I haven't met many parents who, I've met a few, but I haven't met many parents who who don't want their children to succeed.
And that's so important, and it's so true, because, you know, and all the parents, in most cases that I've been involved in with the parents, it has been that they're working themselves to death. They're working themselves silly. If they're not at home, it's usually not because they're hanging out in some bar somewhere every night. And we sometimes get the wrong impression, because many of these people are just trying to make ends meet. But in doing so, it goes back to that question earlier, something's got to give. So at the parents' side, at home, they have to give up that relationship and that time with the child.
That's it.
Unfortunate. And we do have to fit in. We do have to fill in. We do have to be those people that can actually be that significant other. Because I tell you, had it not been for a significant other in my life, and I had a beautiful, wonderful family setting. Mom and dad, you know, still married to this day. I'm at their house right now. You know, they've been married 61 years or whatever it is.
Wow.
You know, congratulations to them. A lot of people.
That's right. Congratulations.
But I still had a significant other who recognized that I was struggling. And, you know, that gentleman, that teacher, took me under his wing and said, you know, you're important. You can actually be somebody.
Wow.
Changed my life. Changed my life. So that's how important we are. That's how the students look up to us too. And we have to make sure that there's no expediency. Take the time for the child. Take the time. Nothing can replace that time that you spend with them.
That is so critical. And so, Dr. Richie, as we bring this session to a close, yes, Catrice, it's a great way to look at it, and children want to know that you care. Yeah. As we bring this to a close, and we're talking about developing positive self-esteem, what can you say to my listeners to, you know, to say, at least give them 2 points on how can you help to develop or cultivate positive self-esteem in our middle school age children? What can we do to help cultivate that?
Well, again, I think that one of the most important things you can do to help develop a child's self-esteem is to put them in a position to be successful. I know, even as a coach, in the years that I coached basketball, I was a pretty successful basketball coach. But I wanted to put every child had something they could add to this team. And in order for me to have a team that would be successful, I had to make sure every child had an opportunity to experience success. It's something they could do that could add to that team. And it's the same thing. We're just trying to find some things that we can do for every child that's going to develop some self-esteem. Because now, again, as I said earlier, in that classroom, identify those leaders in that classroom. You know who they are. Find something. If it's just they're responsible for the attendance, they're responsible for, making sure all the papers are in the correct bins. They're responsible for something. That makes all the difference in the world. That makes all the difference in the world. And the other thing is to make sure that if they're involved in anything, you're there.
That's it.
If you want to develop their self-esteem, then make sure that you can comment on something that means the world to them. Because if it's important to them and you comment on it, that self-esteem shoots up. Especially if you're that significant other, especially if you're that teacher they really look up to. If you're that parent that they really look up to, and you acknowledge that you saw them succeed,
that's it.
I mean, the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. But when they don't get that kind of feedback, they tend to question why they're even involved.
Or why they even exist, right?
Why they even exist, exactly. Why I'm even, and I hate to say this because it breaks my heart, but all the times that I've ever heard a child say that to me, because then the whole conversation takes a totally different path. Because then I'm spending the rest of the time with them, telling them how important they are and how beautiful they are and how they've come into this physical experience that we're having here because they are that important. And
wow.
Because that it matters that much. And
wow.
I understand they're questioning their purpose and they're questioning what is the significance of this. I mean, I'm not finding anything that's working for me. And one of the best answers I ever got, middle school kid, when I was working on my counseling and administrative license there at Prairie View, I was given the opportunity to work in a middle school where I was capable of developing a discipline center. It was DMC, Discipline Management Center. Back at that time, we were to run DMC. Remember that back then?
Yes.
DMC, all the kids are always making fun of me. Oh, DMC, run DMC. You run DMC. But that was a lot of kick. And that's the other thing, too. Never take anything they say to you personally. Laugh with it, roll with it.
You can't.
Out there to you. So I was running DMC. But I would hand a questionnaire, and you would appreciate this. The questionnaire out to the kids when they'd come into the discipline center. And some of the questions are like, why are you in trouble? Do you know why you're in trouble? Do you know blah, blah, blah? What was it? And then it'd get into some deeper questions. And one of those questions was, do you consider yourself a success or a failure?
Wow.
And some of the answers I got on that were kind of deep sometimes, until I had one young man that said, how can I be a failure? I haven't tried everything yet. That changed wow. That changed the whole way I looked at everything. He was exactly right. And so whenever I talk with kids over the years after that, I was kind of like, let me tell you about this young man, because he hit it right on the head. But no, right on the head.
Right.
There's so many things for you to try. Just because that didn't work, you wanted to be a basketball player in 6th grade, now you're in 7th grade, and it didn't work for you. Well, look at all this other stuff going on. Maybe that's not for you. There's so many things. You haven't tried everything yet. You feel like the world's falling apart all around your feet. You haven't tried everything yet.
So you don't get the right to call yourself a failure until you've tried everything.
And when you can come to me and tell me you've tried everything, now we'll talk about failing.
That is so important. That is a very, very important way of looking at it, because it's so hard with teenagers and their brains and the things that they come to believe at such a young age.
Just like that young man right there, most everything that I've learned about dealing with children has come from children.
Yeah.
It hasn't come from anything I've read, hasn't come from anything else. It's usually found in the very conversations with the children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, I am so delighted that you join us. Oh my goodness. This we could go on and on. And I talked about earlier the release of my book. It's called Unchain My Legacy. It's an anthology with 11 other authors. And in my chapter, I talked about my chapter is What I Wish I Knew When I Was 13. And, you know, talking to you about middle schoolers and that 13-year-old threshold is such a critical part of development, and the importance of relationships at that age is so important. And, you know, you get to be there with the kids as they try to figure this out. And that's invaluable.
And it is. And again, like I said, everything I ever learned was from the children. It really is. It really is. Spending time with them, you find out what their world is all about and what their concerns are and their angst are, and how they're dealing with them and what you can do to possibly add to help them. And there's nothing more beautiful. I don't think there's a better profession than having children around you all day long.
That is so true. And even when you're pulling your hair out and you're thinking that you're not making an impact, you still have to show up and be consistent and keep talking and keep reaching out, because one of the things that they won't necessarily show you is that you are making an impact right then. Yes. You'll hear about it later.
Hear about it later. No, I've been surprised. I got to be honest with these. Like I said, these new little machines here where they can get on Facebook and find me, and I'm like, really? Well,
yes.
You were listening.
Yes. And, you know, it's not cool to tell you right then, and they might not realize it right then. But it's
experiences. Yeah, you know, and that's one of the things. That's a good, important point too, Ann. One thing that I try to impress upon teachers whenever they're having difficulty with a child is I want them to understand these are little people. These are little people. They just don't have the experiences we have. They are still little people. Still treat them with respect. Still treat them with all the dignity they deserve. Treat them with all the love. I mean, I smile at every one of them that I see. I tell everyone I can, I love you. Before the day's up, my goal is to tell every child in that building, I love you. Because I'm so afraid they may not hear it all day long.
Yes.
I may be the only person they see smile and say, I love you.
Wow.
And I think over the years, that one practice has probably done more for my relationships with kids than anything else. And at first, they kind of are taken aback, especially when I come into a new school. You know, I've changed schools every 5 to 8 years or whatever over the years. And so you start all over again with another group of kids. And it takes a minute for them to really believe you, because it comes back to that. Is he really going to walk this talk?
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you.
That's kind of weird.
I love you. You're that important.
That is so true. Well, oh my gosh, Dr. Richie, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us on Teen Talk Live. It was such an honor having this time to have this conversation with you, as we, you know, even some of the schools are getting ready to go back in session in a couple of weeks. And this is a really good information. And thank you for all that you do. And thank you for serving our young people.
I certainly appreciate you. And, you know, I've retired twice and I keep getting called back. I keep trying to teach at IUM, but I can't get started because somebody calls me and says, we need you. And that's fine. I mean, I will do it as long as somebody needs. So
that's amazing.
August will be here, and I'm sure I'm going to get another call.
Oh, well, you just keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I think that's amazing. And our kids need you, and they need you more today than they needed you yesterday. So.
Yep. It's not easy today, and I do appreciate it. I want to say shout out to all the teachers that may be on here, all the educators that are on here. You do a beautiful job. You do beautiful work, wonderful work. And there are people that are never going to give you the credit. They're never going to understand what it's like to be in that classroom. And I've been around you too long. I know how important you are. And I know that you didn't get into it for the money. you're in it because you love children. And
absolutely.
you.
Yes. Well, thank you. And I want to thank all my guests for being here. And if you're joining us on the replay, just hashtag replay and share this out. Let's spread the word and let's talk about this topic, middle school drama, and how do we increase the self-esteem of our middle schoolers. This is very important. And my guest has been Dr. Adrian Richie, who was just so insightful in his 40 plus years of as being an educator. And I'm just so delighted that you joined us tonight. And I thank you all for joining us on Teen Talk Live, and tune in for our next episode. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, man.